Hello folks, this is my Gordon Smith graduate guitar, and I've been asked if I could do a little demo of this, mainly because I've fitted some Fishman Fluence pickups into it, and that song, what a great song, isn't it? All Right Now, came out in 1970, 50 years ago. It's astonishing to think so. This group of teenagers, they were teenagers then, produced this fantastic record, and they went on to produce many more, you know, and wow, just wow. I was 10 years old in 1970, and the sight of Kossoff with his legs wide and Les Paul hanging down low, and the sound, wow, glorious. I've never tired of that record. It's a fantastic tune, and that sound, I've never tired of that sound. Kossoff didn't use effects, no stomp boxes, no nonsense like that, and he didn't use any kind of booster or anything. He literally did what I just attempted to do there, played with him and went into the lead solo without so much as a volume tweak or anything, you know, just straight into it. Lots of vibrato and feel on Kossoff's behalf, and which thickened the sound, but essentially it was the Gibson that gave him the sound, and those wonderful PAF pickups from that era, the Seth Lover design pickups, which were so fantastic. Anybody that listens to early Fleetwood Mac with Peter Green, what a guitar sound, what a beautiful, beautiful guitar sound. And Clapton used one on Beano, of course, the John Mayall album. Wasn't actually called Beano, but it looked like the Beano comic, the front cover. So many others, Jimmy Page, obviously, Aerosmith coming forward. Aerosmith in the 70s, I got into Aerosmith about 1976, I think, with the Rocks album, and that blew me away. But Ronnie Montrose, 1973, a friend of mine brought the first Montrose album into school one day and got the music teacher to play a track, Space Station No. 5, heavy, real heavy rock, you know, but again, it was just essentially a Gibson Les Paul played through a stack with Sammy Hagar on vocals. What a sound. Blew me away, really did. And I'm showing my age here, but, you know, that's what inspired me as a young guy. I'd been into Slade and then Mott the Hoople. I still love Mott the Hoople, and they used Gibsons as well, generally juniors. Ian Hunter and Mick Rouse both collected lots of them. When they were on tour, they'd go in all the second-hand shops in America and pick up these guitars, bring them back and sell them and make a bit of a profit, you know, and it would sort of pay their wages basically. They were on next to no money, but you know, they played some great guitars and made some great sounds. And Mick Rouse, and probably a lot of people don't realise, he used Junior on most of the early Bad Company albums, or tracks should I say. You know, the first Bad Company album, you would think it was Les Paul, and it is a Les Paul, but it's a Les Paul Junior essentially, and Paul Rodgers himself often plays a Junior. But I'm drifting away now because really we're talking about the Seth Lover pickup and the sound that Jimmy Page had, Paul Kossoff, obviously Thin Lizzy when they came along, and it's just one of those things to die for, really. And it was what got me into Gordon Smith. When I was 20-ish, I really wanted a Les Paul. At that time I had a Shergold Masquerader, which I bought, the British guitar, on HP and hire purchase, and it was fine. I wrote some songs, lots of songs for my early bands on that guitar, and it was a reasonable guitar, but it wasn't giving me that Gibson sound. Far from it. I was using some big fuzzbox thing just to try and get it to sound beefy and masculine, which was what I was looking for anyway. And I tried out a Gibson Les Paul at Carlsbad Soundhouse. I'd been working in the steelworks for a while by then, and Corby Steelworks, and I was earning a bit more money, and I really wanted to buy one, but they were too expensive. But I tried one anyway, and it was nice. And the guy said, "Here, try this," and handed me a Gordon Smith Gemini, which was I think it was a double cut, so it was the same shape as this, but quite a bit fatter. Had binding front and back, and it weighed a bloody ton. I nearly fell off the stool when he gave me it. Pardon me. And it sounded magnificent. So nice to play. It was fresh out of the box. Just beautiful setup. Wonderful fretting. The controls had coil taps, remember that? And the guy explained to me, you know, you pull this and you pull that and you get an extra sound. And I thought, wow, this is better than the Gibson. And it really was, you know, I really did think this is better than the Gibson, you know. And I knew nothing at all about Gordon Smith. There's no internet or anything then, and I hadn't seen any reviews at that time. I knew nothing about them. And anyway, I couldn't afford it. It was a top of the range model, and I just didn't have the money, so went away. And but it never sort of is there all the time, hitting in the background. Gordon Smith, must find a Gordon Smith. And luckily, I went to just along the road, 7 miles away, to Kettering one day, and in Dick Lavelle's music store, he had a black Gordon Smith Gypsy 2 hanging on the wall. This shape, just hanging on the wall there. It was flat top, whereas this has got a carved top. And had a black scratch plate. It's all gloss black, back, front, all of it. Shallow tuners, shallow bridge. Lovely, you know. And I said, "Can I have a play?" Yep, yep. And we done a deal, and I traded in my Shergold. And I should have kept it, really. They're worth quite a few bob now, but anyway. I traded in my Shergold, and the Gordon Smith was far better. You know, for me it was far better, and it was a great guitar, a great guitar. And I owned that from around about 1984 right through till 2005, and that was my #1 guitar. The bands I was playing in, we were gigging hundreds and hundreds of gigs, and gigging regularly all the time throughout that period. And it was always that guitar was my #1 guitar. And I recorded with Gordon Smith. Everything I've ever recorded, it dawned on me the other day, everything that I've recorded with any band has been on a Gordon Smith, mostly on that black Gypsy 2, but later on a Graduate, I think it was a 97 Graduate or something like that. And here's an interesting fact. I joined a Dr. Feelgood tribute band, and I was using the black Gypsy, and it was fine, but didn't quite get the sound, you know. And the Gypsy was like this, mahogany, all mahogany. This has got a maple cap, and it was a high grade of mahogany. It had a ebony fingerboard as well, so I guess it was a slightly upmarket model. And it had a great beefy sound, which I loved all the time. I played in hard rock bands and it was perfect, you know. And when I joined this Dr. Feelgood tribute band, the sound was just a little bit too much really, and so I'd use the coil taps and roll the tone off and usual sort of stuff to try and get a Telecaster type sound. It wasn't doing it really, and I kept trying tellies. I just couldn't get on with them. I'm not really a Fender man. I've got huge hands and I couldn't get on with the necks or one thing or another, something. Gordon Smith's, the necks always suited my hands, you know, and the fretting and everything else, and Gibsons in general, you know. And anyway, I bought a 97 Graduate, which was Poplar, I believe. The wood was Poplar. It was still quite heavy. It was certainly wasn't a light guitar, but the wood was quite soft, and it sounded totally different, to be honest, to my Gypsy. The Gypsy had coil taps the same, everything was the same. So the pickups looked the same, that's for sure. But the Graduate had a really good approximation of a Telecaster in there. If you pulled the tap out, you could, you know, and same for both pickups, you know. So down at the Doctor's, stuff like that I was playing with, we've done a whole load of Dr. Feelgood songs, but you could nail it with that guitar, you know, and it was surprisingly good. And I bought a PRS McCarthy when I started to have a bit more money, and I tried using that, and I couldn't get as good a sound as the Gordon Smith was giving. And it wasn't until later on I bought another PRS with soap bar pickups, a USA one, which just blew everything away. I mean, that guitar, I've still got it. It's totally phenomenal. It's absolutely nailed it for me for the cutting Dr. Feelgood sound, but for everything. It's just a brilliant guitar. It really is a sensational guitar, and it has two controls, no coil taps because it's a single coil P90s, and three-way switch. And I'm digressing again. So going back to the Gordon Smith, my black one was fairly worn out. It needed refretting and that sort of stuff. I rather foolishly sold it, and I say rather foolishly, I mean I was perfectly happy with the guitars that followed it, especially the PRS. And it was only recently really that I really wanted another Gordon Smith, although I have to say I bought my Firebird, which I demonstrated earlier. I bought that in 2013 from a collector, and he hadn't done a lot with it, and it cost me quite a lot of money. But you've seen it, it's a stunning guitar, absolutely stunning. I've never gigged with that guitar. I've never used it in a band rehearsal or anything, just at home for my own pleasure. And at the same time I was still looking for another Gordon Smith like this, you know, which you know, suited me, and which for old time's sake really sentimental. And I owned a few, and most of them were this sort of modern Poplar ones, you know, and Graduates mostly. I like the carved top, you know, why not? And one thing I found is that they generally came with a matte finish on the back and also on the neck, which some people like obviously, but it was I mean this came with a gloss top, a matte back and a matte neck. I've varnished these myself, lacquered them myself, and it's a hard lacquer, you know, and it seems to be very durable, and it certainly looks right, you know. Took a bit of polishing up, mind you. So getting back to these with the matte back, everyone I bought was dinged and scratched and knocked, but it wasn't like gigging knocks. It was just like somebody put it against a radiator or something, or maybe it'd fallen over, I don't know, whatever. But they all got loads of chips around here, and always around the headstock, always chips all around the headstock, you know. Really thin paint, crap stuff. I don't know what they use, I've got no idea. But these weren't like battle scars from playing, you know. I don't mind that. My PRS is really knocked about because I gigged it so much, and you know, it's done hundreds of gigs as well. And it was brand new when I bought it, so you can imagine it was, you know, quite something. But I could, that's the beauty of a guitar, the scars and that you put them there, but when things are chipping so easy, and you buy a guitar that was a year old and it's so obvious it hasn't been used. I mean, this guitar, there's no fret wear at all. I bought this last year and I think it had a few owners, and I don't know why, but I don't think anybody had gigged it, but it had lots of scabs, and I've sort of touched them in, but you can still see them even now, which was familiar to me with a lot of the Gordon Smiths. And the other thing was with the poplar wood. My guitar, like I said, the Graduate, it sounded great, but on more than one occasion when I was gigging, and we sort of moved around the stage a fair bit, and sort of fairly physical, and the guitar would just fall off the strap down to my ankles, sort of thing, and the strap button had pulled out of the wood. This poplar is they class it as a hardwood, but it's the softest hardwood ever, and yeah, it's just not suitable, I don't think. Cedar and poplar, I think. I had to put araldite into the guitar and then tap it as if you were tapping a thread for engineering use, and your big long screw with a proper thread on it, and to actually get around that problem, and it happened more than once with more than one guitar. Anyway, I get back to this guitar. This is Gordon Smith anniversary Graduate. So they brought out the Graduate model in 1984, around about the same time as I bought my first Gordon Smith. So the main difference between this and my one was it had the carved top. It's got a bit of a shape to it. It's actually faux binding. It's not binding, it's where it's been scraped away, so this maple. And this one's got a maple neck, of course. Mine had a mahogany neck. So what made me look for one of these was that Gordon Smith had got a stock of Brazilian mahogany, and so this was in 2004, and they decided to build 200 examples of this, so it's Brazilian mahogany on the back, single piece, there's no joins, with a maple neck, which is a sort of bird's eye maple with some really nice flaming effect on it as well. And the cap is the same, and you can see the bird's eye sort of effect in there. And it came with a gloss top. Apart from that, this was a special model. It was quite expensive, it was an anniversary model. It comes with a certificate and all the rest. I thought they could have took it a step further, and they should have lacquered it all over, in my opinion. I lacquered mine. I changed all the plastics because it had their proprietary black knobs, some black pickups. But sunburst guitars, all Gibson sunbursts always have cream and gold, and because it works. It really does work, and the black's kind of odd on that background, especially with the maple neck, which is quite unusual really for the type of guitar, a set neck. So I've changed all those parts, and what we're here for really is these Fluence pickups. These are Fishman Fluence, which I fitted recently, and these are an active pickup. So there's a battery in the back, had to make room for the battery. It's got two push-pull controls still, here and here. I would have put another two in, but for the sake of the battery I couldn't, because there's some extra features on these. There's something that they call high frequency tilt, Fishman that is, the pickup manufacturer. When you pull this out, it sort of replicates, these are active pickups, so it replicates a passive pickup with a long lead. If you're a guitarist and you use an extra long lead, you lose some tone. There's no doubt about it. The guitar sort of darkens slightly, and it loses some of its clarity and tone, and some people like that, especially with a lot of these vintage sort of people looking for vintage sounds and vintage looks as well. So the standard sound on this, these are Fishman Classics, which replicate the Seth Lover PAFs, which were fitted to Gibsons in the 50s and 60s. which is the sound, the holy grail sound that everybody tries to replicate now. There's lots of pickups available, mostly very expensive, which attempt to replicate Seth Lubber's original patent applied for PAF pickups, which is a Gibson design. So these are classics. They've got they're not made like other pickups. They don't have coils. They're basically lots of thin layers of circuit boards. They're built up of a sandwich of a lot of circuit boards, which have magnets, of course. You can still see the pole pieces, but essentially these are just made to look like pickups, standard guitar pickups. They're totally different technology, but the thing with them is that they're all identical. If I buy some Fishman classics down the local shop in Dumfries and someone else buys some in America, they're absolutely identical. The sound will be identical, and you really cannot say that of other pickups, the ones with the windings on, even though they might use a computer machine that counts the winds and the rest of it. Essentially, they do tend to sound, they vary a little bit, a little, but these don't vary at all. So thankfully, that when you buy them, you're going to get the same as what everybody else gets. You're going to get exactly what it says on the box. The other thing is they're very, very quiet. There's no hum at all. I mean, if I turn that, I can leave that on and it just doesn't make any noise. And even with a bit of boost or with the coils tapped to, there's a little booster on that. There's just nothing that's adding to the hum, which is great. And the main reason, of course, is to get that sound. I've had quite a few guitars in the last few years, and I've still got my PRSs, and the McCarthy's a good example of a classic Gibson sound, really. And I wanted this guitar to be more like I remember my first Gordon Smith. When I got it, I thought it sounded brittle. It's got the proprietary pickups in it, which Gordon Smith make using ceramic magnets, and I've sort of gone down the Alnico 5 route, but then moved again with these, and I think they do the job, and very happy with it. So I'll just play a couple more typical Gibson type tunes to let you see what it's like. And first of all, this high frequency tilt facility, if I just it's very subtle. You can hear it more when I switch it, but it takes some of that ka-ching out of it, which I like the ka-ching, so I'm going to rewire it all and coil tap the pickups. I've ordered some micro switches as well, because this is very useful actually. This one down here gives it a bit more boost. Notice the difference there. It's Aerosmith Sweet Emotion, and obviously quite a heavy band, so just that little bit of extra cut, it's something that John Smith's done as well. Over the years he had these little booster micro switches on and things like that. And I'm not sure how his work. This works within the pickup, but his was something extra, I believe, on the Gordon Smith. And yeah, so you can get a real meaty sound with that, and enough for a lead solo, but it's quite awkward pulling that up when you're switching between chords, and so I'm going to put that onto a micro switch. And yeah, so I've gone back to just a standard humbucker now, just standard bridge humbucker and Jimmy Page. Pull this out. Put that again. Yeah, you get the idea. And I think it sounds very good tonight. But I'm playing this through a Blackstar, the same Blackstar amp I used to demonstrate the Firebird. So it's just a ID Core transistor amp, and it's nothing special at all. If I was to play this through my Mesa Boogie at some volume, it sounds absolutely glorious, I can promise you. But here we are in lockdown, and I can't afford to upset the neighbours, so there you go. There she is. Beautiful guitar, I think, and I'll be keeping it. You know, I'm satisfied. Thanks for listening to me. Cheers. Bye.